Every now and then, when we were kids, our parents would head out of town for a weekend getaway. That's when Uncle Ron would come to stay with us. He was single his whole life, but he loved kids, always up for watching us, especially on snowy winter nights like this one. That Friday, the storm was raging outside as we huddled around the TV in the living room, watching Titanic. It was me, my two brothers, my older sister, and Uncle Ron. Some moments from that night feel crystal clear, others are shrouded in fog. I remember the power flickering off mid-movie, and we scrambled to reset the VCR, hoping we hadn't lost our place. Not long after, Uncle Ron drifted off to sleep on the couch. We kept the movie running, barely noticing as he snored beside us. When it got to the scene where Rose grabs the axe to free Jack, my brother, who'd just come back from the bathroom, suddenly yelled for us to come over. He had peeked outside, and whatever he saw made him pale. Curious and a bit excited, we all rushed to the back door. Outside, clear as day against the fresh snow, were footprints. They led from our back door to the window, then turned and stretched back out toward the woods. My brother said he heard the door handle twist. Our older sister, usually so tough, ran back inside, panicking. But my brothers and I were too intrigued to let it go, the thrill of mystery calling us into the night. Ignoring her warnings, we put on our boots and jackets and promised we'd stay close. She went back to the movie and we set off, trudging into the blizzard. The footprints led us deep into the woods. The further we went, the deeper the prints became, as though whoever made them had been there more recently. The storm was filling them in fast, though, leaving us to wonder how close we were to whoever had been watching us. Finally, after what felt like ages, we saw something looming in the distance, a small cabin tucked among the trees, barely visible in the dark. Its windows were pitch black. The footsteps led straight to the cabin's front door. We didn't go up to the door. Instead, we crept over to a nearby window, trying to peer inside, but it was too dark to make out anything. Then, without warning, there were two loud bangs from within, and the sound of something sliding across the floor. We froze, listening, our breath turning to mist in the frigid air. Just then, one of my brothers gasped and pointed. At another window, barely visible, a head was peeking out. It was shadowed, featureless, just a black shape watching us. Then, before we could react, the head pulled back, and we heard fast, pounding footsteps from inside. The front door flew open, slamming against the wall. We screamed and turned, running back through the woods, stumbling in the snow as the cabin vanished behind us. I don't know if anyone or anything was actually chasing us, but we didn't stop running until we were back in the house. The next morning, when we told Uncle Ron, he laughed, calling it a snow day story, and brushed it off as our imaginations. We convinced him to hike with us back to the cabin, hoping he'd see it too, but after hours of searching, we found nothing. There was no trace of a cabin in those woods, no footprints, no sign that anyone had been there at all. Years later, I still live in that house, and I've searched those woods countless times, determined to prove that it was real. But there's nothing. No cabin, not even on maps or satellite images. And if it weren't for my brothers, I'd wonder if it was all just a strange, impossible dream. My friends, who I'll call Adam and Luke, joined me on a laid-back camping trip near the edge of Blue Ridge National Park. We set up our camp beside a small, still pond. It felt like the perfect spot to kick back and relax. The plan was simple: get out into nature, crack open some beers, and just enjoy each other's company. I was on my second drink, laughing with Adam and Luke about all kinds of stuff, old stories, shared friends, while music played low in the background. The whole vibe was just right. But then Adam suddenly reached over and turned the volume down to a whisper. He shushed us, staring intently at the water. "You guys see that?" he murmured. Luke and I looked toward the pond, which was faintly lit by the glow of our campfire. At first, I didn't see anything unusual. "There's something out there in the water," Adam whispered, Unsure, I grabbed a flashlight from my tent despite Adam's warning. Don't. Ignoring him, I switched it on and aimed it at the pond. The beam cut across the water but revealed nothing, until we heard a faint splash as if someone or something had just stepped out of view. The sound wasn't loud, but in the silence it felt unnaturally close. My stomach clenched, and the unease spread between us. I switched off the flashlight, and we quickly shut down the speaker, settling into a tense silence as we listened to the dark woods around us. For what felt like an eternity, we just sat there, frozen, straining to hear. After about an hour of nothing, we started to relax, eventually returning to our tents to call it a night. But as I lay alone, I couldn't stop thinking about what Adam had seen in the water. He never said if it looked like a person, an animal, or something else. My senses heightened, and I started hearing things. Rustling, something shifting out in the trees. I sat up, trying to listen. Then, suddenly, I heard a sound close by, a footfall just outside. Was it human? Animal? I wasn't sure, but every instinct in me was on high alert. Another step closer this time. Whatever it was circling the campsite. Then, just outside my tent, there was a final heavy footstep. My pulse pounded in my ears as I quickly grabbed my phone, texting Adam, "There's something." Before the thought even finished, the night was ripped apart by a scream, chilling and unnatural, somewhere between a man and a woman. It sounded deep enough to be male, but not quite. The scream lingered in the cold air, echoing off the trees before vanishing into silence. Paralyzed with fear, I typed a message to Adam. "We need to run." He texted back instantly, "What was that?" I didn't respond, still trying to figure out our options. But then, another text came through from Adam. "The coast is clear. Run for the car." My heart pounded as I reached for my keys, unzipped the tent, and bolted toward the car, which, thankfully, was only a short sprint away. We piled into the vehicle, locking the doors, and spent the night crammed inside, keeping a wary eye on the forest around us. When morning finally broke, we cautiously returned to the campsite. Everything was there, untouched. But to this day, I don't know what we encountered that night, or if it was human at all. All I know is, whatever it was, it's out there, somewhere in those woods, and I'm just glad we made it out. Skipping most of the backstory, I was out in the woods one evening, trying to capture some footage of the forest in the rain. I'm a photographer and videographer, so I'd packed light, just my backpack with a spare pair of pants, a flashlight, my tripod camera, and a couple of granola bars. The rain had started as a soft drizzle, just enough to add a misty atmosphere, perfect for my shots. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of my path. One moment, I was following a faint trail. The next, I was turning in circles, every direction looking the same. I was lost. As the minutes stretched on, panic started to creep in. I found myself shouting in frustration, hoping to hear anything familiar, but only silence answered. An hour passed, maybe more. The forest grew darker, and the rain had settled into a steady, cold drizzle. That's when I noticed it. Footsteps. Soft at first, almost drowned out by the rain. At first, I convinced myself it had to be an echo, or maybe even an animal, but the footsteps didn't stop, and they always seemed to come from different sides, as if something, or someone, was circling me. I tried to steady my breathing, slowing my steps so I could listen more closely. And then, I saw it. Just a flash. Half of a figure darting behind a tree. Not an animal, but a man. Every instinct screamed at me to stay calm, so I quickened my pace, pretending I hadn't seen him, hoping he'd think I was unaware. The forest was growing dimmer by the second, and I found myself constantly glancing over my shoulder, heart pounding, barely able to think straight. I checked my phone, desperate for a signal. One bar flickered on the screen. My hands shaking, I wiped away the raindrops and opened maps, trying to locate the closest road. Relief washed over me when I saw it was only a short walk away. But as I took that first step toward safety, footsteps closed in behind me. I turned and saw him again. The sight was like something from a nightmare. A tall, hulking figure, half hidden by the shadows of the trees. He wore jeans and a dark blue jacket with a hood, partially unzipped to reveal a white shirt underneath. Thick glasses glinted from under his hood. For a brief, chilling moment, his gaze met mine, and he slipped back behind a tree, thinking I hadn't seen him. I stood frozen, paralyzed with terror, and then, above the patter of rain, I heard a low whisper, "Now." That was it. I didn't think, I just ran. Adrenaline surged, and I tore through the forest, barely feeling my feet hit the ground. After what felt like an eternity, I burst out onto the road. Not daring to look back, I kept running until I was sure I'd put enough distance between us. Eventually, a car approached, and I waved it down, breathless and drenched. I told the driver I'd gotten lost, not mentioning the shadow that had stalked me. He just nodded and drove me to the parking area where my car was, accepting my silence without question.